Good gracious, that Doug Johnston's a talented man, isn't he? It's enough to make you sick. Thankfully, he's very lovely as well, so you can't even be mad at him. Anyway, thanks to Doug for our halftime music. And now to our main event. We are in conversation with Olivia Kiernan and James Delagi. If you do have any questions for either of the writers tonight, please do pop them in our chat box because Q&A has disappeared. We don't know where it's gone. So Olivia Kiernan is an Irish writer. In a previous life, she completed a diploma in anatomy and physiology, then a BSc in chiropractics, before she succumbed to the creative itch and embarked on an MA in creative writing. In 2015, she began writing Play Dead for Me, a crime thriller that was published in 2018 and features Dublin detective Frankie Sheehan. The Killer in Me and If Looks Could Kill followed soon after, and the fourth in the series, The Murder Box, is available now. James Delagi is the author of 55 and most recently Vanished. His novel 55 was published in 2019 and has since been optioned for a feature film. Vanished is his latest novel set in West Australia and sees the Kane family vanish after relocating from Perth to an abandoned mining town. James has apparently lived in South Africa, Australia and Scotland, and he incorporates this diverse knowledge of towns, cities and landscapes and culture into his writing. So please everybody, huge round of applause for Olivia and James.
Hello.
Hello, good evening, welcome. James, I hear there's a bit of contention about your bio.
Well, this contention seems to have been brought up by you. Apparently I'm still living in Australia, and I'm very much not living in Australia, though I wish I was. But no. That's I'm in England.
I mean, if you were in Australia, it would be the middle of the night, so you would be very.
Yeah, I've done some calls with Australian publishers because obviously it's because both books are set in West Australia. Australia is a big market, so yeah, doing calls in the middle of the night with Australian and when you're half asleep isn't much fun, but
I was half asleep during the day anyway, so it doesn't matter for me.
Olivia, I'm going to start with you. The fourth Frankie Sheehan book came out earlier this month. What initially made you want to stick with Frankie and her team?
Probably the 2-book contract first.
That will do it.
Had to deliver another one. But yeah, it's just I think when you write series fiction, you get so attached to your main character and the team. And for me, especially, like I wish I was one of those writers who knew everything about their character before they get going. But I always feel like I'm on a path of discovery. So each book, I'm kind of looking at a different aspect of her personality. So, and I even now, like, I just think I feel like I've only scratched the surface of my main character really with how far I could go with her. So I think that's the pull for me with all series fiction. It's probably the same as with the reader, that's why you want to go back. It's like that feeling of a box set, and you want to keep returning to see what your characters are doing now, or if an idea comes to you, you're thinking, oh, I wonder how Frankie would deal with that,
And how do you manage to keep track of the backstories over a series?
Very badly. I do have a character Bible, but I've really gone awry with a couple of things that I've discovered. Each book you discover previous books where you've perhaps gone a little astray with just tiny little things, but I thought I was all smug, at the first book. I thought, right, I'm going to keep a character Bible, but yeah, it's just so hard to kind of keep track of absolutely everything, especially when you're writing police procedurals, because you have an entire team usually of returning characters who are also have, even though they've only got small little stories that you're still pushing them along with the main character each time. So it's usually that, but yeah, so I try. My copy editor does her best as well, but it's very hard. I don't know how writers like Ian Rankin and that kind of keep on top of it, but
I think George R. R. Martin employs some very passionate fans to keep track of his.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I don't think I could put that on my mammy and my 3 friends that buy my books. Might have to wait till I accrue a few more friends before I start doing. or fans rather. Yeah.
James, there are a lot of readers out there who want me to tackle you on the ending of 55. So without spoilers, can you tell us why you chose to go that way?
It was a conscious decision whenever I was writing the book. Whenever I didn't really have an ending in mind until I got to the end of the book. And whenever I got to the end of the book, that was the ending that felt most appropriate to me. And it's kind of like, without giving anything away, it's I've taken the reader 99.9% of the way through the book, and then the end is, it's your sort of decision, depending, you might be a positive person or a negative person. So it's, you get to decide sort of what you think happens at the very, very end. But yes, that does make it, for some people, it does make it quite a Marmite ending, that open sort of style ending. And I didn't think at the time, because it was my debut, that my publisher would want such an open ending.
Right.
Well, it's not an entirely open ending. You can't, but I didn't think they would allow me to go with an open ending. But to their credit, they allowed it. So.
And you've had some fairly passionate responses from readers about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. You get some. Yeah, some people are really. I've had people come out. Yeah, I love this book, but there seems to, the last couple of pages seems to not have been printed, or this is a 5-star book and a 1-star ending, so I'll give you 3 stars.
Delightful, just
Well,
joyous.
Really happy lives, clearly. So it's yeah.
You can't please everybody.
You can't, and nor should you try. Both of you seem to capture settings so well, but in different ways. So how important is setting to you? James, I'm going to go with you first.
Well, setting for me, it's pretty much the central, well, one of the central characters in my story would be the setting, because West Australia is obviously, for me, it's just a beautiful landscape, and it just allows, it's like a blank canvas that you can put pretty much any story onto it. And having been there, I'm quite a visual writer. I like writing about landscape. I like having my characters sort of set in the midst of this sort of remote location, and where literally anything can happen. So yeah, for me, it's like having the character Bible. It is one of the characters that I need to factor in.
Brilliant, thank you. And Olivia, I kind of feel like you put us really strongly in Ireland through your dialogue. How do you manage that?
I try. It helps having an Irish accent. So that helps. Can I just say, I apologise? My pug is sitting beside me, and if you hear really intense snoring, it's the dog and not me. So she's beside me here. But yeah, I mean, for me, the Irish kind of putting in that cadence in the dialogue is very important. But you can't. I try not to go too heavy with it, even, and sometimes I'm actually quite surprised when readers kind of pick up on it, because I do try to make sure it's not confusing for readers. So it should really just be about the cadence and the wit, rather than any kind of rather than that the dialect is kind of spelled out in the text in any way. But yeah, there's always a point in editing where you're pulled up for certain things that for us is normal phraseology in Ireland that I want to keep in, where I feel the context is clear, and that it might be rewarding for a reader who's not from Ireland perhaps to kind of grasp it. Like I think in my last book, Frankie and Baz, their 2 partners, were heading to a witness's house, and this woman was describing how the victim who had been killed had arrived at their house, and she said, oh, and she arrived with one arm as long as the other, which to me, that's just a kind of a throwaway phrase we say in Ireland. I don't know, you might have something similar up north as well. But my editor was like, what on earth does this mean? And I was like, well, if you've got one arm as long as the other, it means you're not carrying anything. You've arrived to someone's house without a gift, so, but that's a kind of common phrase that we would have over there. So throwing in the odd phrase like that, I think, is quite important for me, because it keeps their Irish characters set in Ireland, and it kind of, but also as well, even for people who aren't from Ireland, within the context of that, when it dawns on them what that means, it's a little bit of humor in what can be sometimes quite dark investigations. So, and I think that is one thing the Irish are very good at. When things get dark, we always know where to crack a joke. So I think for me, that's very important to try and get into my novels if I can.
Brilliant, thank you. James, I've got 3 questions from Russ Thomas, author of Firewatching and Nighthawking. You've kind of already explained this, but if you could maybe try again. What keeps taking you back to Australia in your books?
Well, first of all, what keeps taking me back to Australia are the ideas. The first 2 books are essentially ideas that can really only happen in West Australia, and that sort of remote landscape. So I would love. I've written, I've other novels I've set in other parts of the world as well, but Australia seems to be the place that I'm drawn back to for my main ideas. I would love to write something as immersive in Dublin as Olivia's. I've literally just finished The Murder Box, and it's the D.I. Frankie Sheehan series is one of my favorites. I would go back to it. I've already told her that I want another book immediately. But so Australia, I think every author has got somewhere that they really enjoy writing about, and that they feel passionate about writing about, and that's West Australia to me.
And actually, just off the back of that, Alex Hawley has a question to both of you. Would you ever consider setting a story elsewhere? So James, is there anywhere that's kind of piqued your interest other than Australia?
Well, the first novel that I tried that I won't let anybody read is set in Newfoundland.
You immediately want to read it now.
Yeah,
No, you don't want to read it. You really don't want it. It's set in Newfoundland, so I enjoy writing about other. I've one set in London, Northern Ireland, Drogheda, Vietnam.
Oh, nice.
So I have, and in the US as well. So but I would love to write Antarctica.
Yeah.
But then again, that's similar to West Australia in the fact that it's sort of quite a remote place and quite a sort of desolate experience. So maybe that's what I'm drawn to.
Excellent. Olivia, would you consider moving away from Ireland in your writing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons because I've lived in the UK now since I was 19, so all of my adult life I've been over here, and that's why one of the reasons why I love to write about Ireland. It's like I get to be there in some respects, so but at the moment I'm currently working on a novel that's set in England, so we'll see how that goes, and then it'll probably be, because I'll be missing Ireland, back to Ireland again with Frankie directly after that. Yeah.
So is this a standalone, or is it part of the Frankie?
Standalone, but yeah, we're very early stages, so I won't say much more, because I might scare the idea away, because that's what happens.
Yeah. James, Russ would also like to know, will we see more of Emmeline?
We will, but unlike Olivia, I find it very difficult to write series. I've never written. I've only written standalone books. Even in the unpublished novels, they're all standalone as well. So I have planned a 3-book series, but doesn't involve Emmeline. So, but I would really, once the idea arrives, I would love to write about Emmeline again. For whenever I started writing Vanished, Emmeline sprung to, just sort of materialized and sort of started as if she was shouting that I want to be in this book, because I knew the character, I knew her past, I knew what she was like immediately. One of those characters that you just have to write about. Oh. But I need the idea to write around.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So is it fair to say, because you mentioned your 3-book series that you've plotted, do you plot your books before you write them?
generally. It could be a long outline that I've previously had. There's one book that was a 25,000 word outline.
Wow.
But then that's essentially the book. But then where I tried just doing it, sort of pantsing it by just doing a chapter, writing a couple of lines, doing that chapter. But generally, it works better if I plan it. Otherwise, I will just ramble about nothing.
And Olivia, how best do you work?
I get really envious of this because I would love to be, because I just think it must be just such a nice safety net to have. But I think I just think I've got the brain like of a blue bottle or something. My concentration span, like once I've exhausted what's going to happen in my head, that's it. I'm off to I want the new idea, the new shiny thing. So for me, I used to always say, oh, I don't plan, but I don't actually think that's true, really. I think I probably sit down more like a pantser and just kind of get the voice, get the tone of the novel, and then just start writing. But there will always be at least 4 or 5 key scenes that I can see in my head very clearly, like very cinematically, and I'll be writing towards those scenes. And I won't know what's happening in between, but I'll be writing towards them. And then probably when I'm about 3/4 of the way through, that's when I will sit back and I look at the whole structure of the novel. And I am quite fascinated with structure. So it's not as if I sit down and do a kind of a pantser write and I'm just no eye on the ball for narrative structure at all. Even as I'm moving along and don't know what's happening, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, something needs to pick up here, or the second storyline needs to cross over, but it won't necessarily be written down. I'll just have an awareness that is what needs to happen next. And then when it comes to the 3/4 kind of stage, obviously you're deciding what's going to happen for the last part of the book. And that's probably the most unnerving part for me, but also the most exciting, because usually that's the point where you realize you've put things in place you didn't even realize you'd put in place, and the ending of the novel is right there, and you're just kind of clearing the dirt away to find it. So it's probably the most nerve-wracking in case you don't find it, but also the most enjoyable. And I think most writers, I've heard them say that before, when you've accidentally planted something in your text that your characters are going, oh yeah, that's why that's there. And it's almost a bit magical, when that happens. And it is a real buzz as a writer when you get to that point. So yeah, I kind of do plan, but it's a bit the cart. What is it, the cart after the horse or before the horse? I don't know, but it's one of those.
Yeah. So this is your latest.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so basically, Frankie, my detective, it's her birthday when the book opens, and she receives what she thinks is a murder mystery game. And she just thinks, because she's a detective, she eats, sleeps and drinks murder mystery all day long. So she thinks it's a gag gift or a joke gift from one of her colleagues or her family. And she opens it up one evening after a particularly tough day where she's not getting very far in her current investigation. And she opens it up, and it's a beautiful glossy kind of box, and inside there's a case file, and there's a welcome letter saying welcome to the murder box, the immersive mystery game, and there's a bus ticket. It has lots of clues to help for players to solve the game, and it even has a post-mortem report. So she starts looking through this box, and soon after she begins to see some quite worrying similarities between the fictional victim that's described in the game and missing 22-year-old Lydia Callan. So that's where it kicks off. So basically she's kind of dived into a murder mystery game where there is a real victim at the core.
Excellent. And James, the final question from Russ Thomas is, people must disappear in the outback all the time. Were there any memorable or gruesome stories you came across when you were researching?
Well, there's lots of stories about people who just plain disappear in the middle of nowhere. And there's obviously the famous story of Peter Falconio and Joanne Lees as well. So all those stories of people, you know, disappearing are always sort of in my head about what could happen, but also the story, like from being over there, some of the stories that of there's a story in 55 about the character just running into a spider web, like that sort of covers them completely. And yeah, that's based on something that happened to me, just sort of running, going in. It's a place called the Gun Barrel Highway. It's between Perth and or it's between Alice Springs and Perth. And so obviously it's a long journey. So we all jumped for a comfort break, and I jumped out, ran behind this sort of hedge straight into this massive spider web, standing there frozen, and then started ripping the spider web off me.
Oh,
but obviously why you left the country immediately after.
Yeah, but I was told that the bigger the spider, the bigger the better. There's less chance of being poisonous, really.
That sounds like something they tell people who come into the country just to
yeah. Like, yes.
Yeah, piranhas are really safe. Go in there.
Yes, like the famous drop bears, as they will tell all tourists about the bears that live in the trees, and drop down and then eat your brains.
Oh God.
But yeah, so obviously Australia has that, as I say, has that opportunity, has that sort of empty canvas that you can put anything pretty much onto.
And would you mind telling us a little bit about Vanished?
Oh, good pointing. Oh, that's an excellent. You actually pointed straight at it. Yeah, well, Vanished is set in West Australia, as you know, and it's about a young family that move from Perth to Delagi, which is an abandoned mining town in the Great Victorian Desert, to start a new life and to escape what is a checkered past. And then they promptly disappear amid sort of noises in the earth and sort of mysterious shadows around town. And into this sort of aftermath of this comes Detective Emmeline Taylor, who has to discover where the family have gone to, why they moved there, and who would have liked to see them vanish. So it's told in sort of two parallel timelines. One, the present, where Emmeline is trying to figure out where the family are, and the past, which is showing you what actually happened, and then they sort of eventually converge.
Brilliant, thank you. Olivia, I have to ask you, you did a master's in creative writing.
Yes.
Been quite a bit of debate about whether people need them to be a writer. Where did you do yours, and did you find it particularly useful?
I did mine in West Sussex in our college called Westdean College, which kind of specialises in kind of conservation and kind of old school kind of arts and that. And the creative writing course that I went on was very new. I think it was only just started when I kind of signed up for it. But no, I definitely don't think you need it, but you need a discipline for craft and to, I think someone who reads a lot and who is not afraid to accept criticism and look back at your work it's just the same, but I think a lot of people who sign up for MAs is because anyone who writes is just absolutely passionate about writing, and to get to be in a room with 20 or so other people. I mean, I was part-time, so it was once a week, and I was working full-time. I ran my own business at the time, and I used to drive down on Monday, so get up at 6, drive down, and then it would be 10 to 4, and then I would drive up, and then I'd work the rest of the week running my clinic in Oxfordshire here, and then I would write in the evenings. So I think if you're not immersed in the writer world and you're still kind of in the submission stage, that was the attraction for me for an MA. I needed something that let me take the writing seriously, and that motivated me when I was absolutely exhausted at 10 o'clock at night coming home from work, that I would sit down and do my pages and do my writing and keep me excited about it. but I definitely don't think you need it. There's lots and lots of published authors out there who have, you know, written books and have never done an MA or attended a creative writing course. And in fact, some of them are now even tutors themselves. So, but I also don't think you should feel ashamed if you want to do one, just because you want to spend some time with some writers and you want to indulge that part. So often people are made to feel ashamed for this kind of thing, yet artists go on art courses all the time, and creatives in every other industry go on courses to kind of collect new ideas and become inspired. So yeah, it was definitely helpful for me in that way. It gave me permission to have time in my life to write, and it showed me I could get to the end of a novel, because by the end of that MA I'd finished a novel. And I think once you understand that the secret is just putting one word after the next, you get to the end. And sometimes you need someone standing over you to do that. So I think once you discover that, you're away.
And once you completed your MA, was it then you got an agent and you signed?
No. It's a long haul. For my overnight success took many years. I don't even think if I can call myself a huge success now, but anyway. But yeah, getting published took many years. So I finished my MA, I think it was 2012, and then I think it was 2017 I got my deal. And that did happen quite quickly. Like when I sent my manuscript out to agents, I think it was within a few days I started getting interest from agents, which my debut crime was actually my fourth novel I'd written. So that's what I'm saying. I wasn't just, you know, I hadn't just written it of a Tuesday and then got a publishing deal on a Thursday. It took a long time of development.
I'm just like Craig David when you say that. I'm sorry.
Got my publishing deal on Tuesday. Sorry, do not replay this to people afterwards, my singing voice. But yeah, so we got my deal, and that was it after that. But it did take, just for everyone out there, I think almost every writer is the same story. It's not going to happen really quickly. But it doesn't matter if you like writing, does it?
And James, how about you?
It took me 8 novels.
Wow.
Before one, then I mine was kind of similar to Olivia. Then I sent it 55 out to an agent, and then within
was
a couple
it on a Monday
days.
or Tuesday then?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember those details. I just remember being amazed to get something back from an agent to say, I want this. So, but and I really, quite the opposite to Olivia, I really didn't like English in school.
Right.
I did it to GCSE and scraped it, and then I didn't even do any writing for years and years after it. Until and then I started doing some screenplays, and then I was getting nowhere with the screenplays, and then I decided to write some novels, a couple of which are based on the screenplays.
Right. Wow. Our very own Simon Bewick would like to know, will you go back to the write unpublished ones at some point?
That's for you, I think.
Yes, sorry, James.
Just dragged it for me.
Or is it?
Sorry, to the 8 unpublished ones, James. Will you do anything with them? The voice of God. Whoa.
Yeah, well, I might try and attempt, but they're not all crime. There's horror, historical fiction. There's a zombie novel set in Northern Ireland. There's sort of contemporary dramas. There's a Vietnam War novella. There's lots of different ones, but crime was the first one that, you know, I'd written a couple of crime novels, and it was the genre that sort of felt more natural to write.
And Olivia, how about you?
Yeah, I don't know, because my first one was kind of suspense, but romance. So there was kind of a love story romance, and it was very much based on Irish lore and legend. So I guess it was kind of like my love story to what started me off with storytelling, and that when I was very little, my aunt used to this sounds very sickeningly idyllic, but anyway, this is how it plays out in my head. My aunt used to sit us on the farm gate and tell us about the banshee and various different legends and just scare the living daylights out of us when we were little. So I kind of exercised that with the first novel, and then my second and third were more aimed at the children's market. But I think for me it was just that I wanted to write a crime thriller all along, but I just didn't feel quite ready yet. I don't think I quite had nailed my voice as an author and made that kind of decision. And I think maybe that's the MA taught me a bit, that I kind of knew that I wasn't quite there, and I needed those first few books which I'm proud of. They're all stepping stones in the right direction.
Yeah.
I knew when I wrote the first crime thriller, like it was definitely different to what I'd written before. And I did think to myself, if I can't get this published, I'm going to be in trouble, because I knew it was the best thing I'd written to date,
But that's a similar Olivia story about sort of being told stories whenever you're younger. That's also quite similar to, I grew up in the countryside, and that would be the same. There's quite an oral tradition of sort of telling stories. Mm-hmm. Whenever I was at last year of primary school, we had a teacher, and he started the year by telling this story, and he would tell every Friday. He would spend half an hour telling this story, and right at the end, his last line was, and the hand came out of the grave and grabbed onto his leg and started to pull, just like I've been pulling yours. He was just making it all up the whole way throughout the year. And that's the kind of storytelling that we sort of grew up with.
Yeah, it does.
I thought you were going to say he'd just been telling you the story of Carrie for the whole year.
No, that would be good. It was Stephen King. Stephen King was my teacher.
Oh, right. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And yet you didn't like English.
No.
Keith Young would like to know, do either of you get upset about any negative comments or reviews about your books?
I don't think so. I don't try not to get too upset about them. My feeling is more that if you read a book, you're kind of entitled to your opinion for it. I just put it out there, and then, but so some of them were more confused as some of them, because some of them do write like, oh my God, I absolutely love this, absolutely riveting, and then it's like 3 stars. I'm like, come on, put another one on there. But but again, it doesn't really make me lose sleep at night. And I think early on, what I used to do if I was upset, I would look at some of my absolute favorite authors and the books that I would think were just gold and couldn't be improved on, and their reviews were always so low, and I would just think, yeah, I've often been told I'm misunderstood, so I just put it down to that if I get that.
I think you both are aware of the Blood Brothers podcast, where they do 1-star review.
Yes.
It's always like a great book, but somebody's just had an issue with something really ridiculous. So yeah, I think that's a really great idea, Olivia.
I think I had one in the US as well who marked me down, and I think it was like 2 stars, and her opening line was which made me laugh. Like, it wasn't upsetting, because again, it was just for a US readership, kind of very typical. And she went, I'm so disappointed if this is the way people in Ireland talk, because there's some swearing in my books. And I was just like, my God, that's like so toned down in comparison to how we actually talk in Ireland. Just in her review, she hadn't just like put down my book, but also insult an entire nation. I thought that was quite funny. But again, it wouldn't really upset me. I'd be thinking, okay, yeah, it's a sensitive button over there, any of the swear words. You can murder people any way you want, but don't drop the F-bomb, whatever you do.
And for God's sake, don't touch the cats.
No, don't touch the cats. I haven't touched any cats. I'm innocent. I haven't done anything.
The second ever email I got was from somebody in West Australia, and I had written about, in 55, I mentioned like a forest, as in sort of really mentioned some trees, and they said, well, I think you'll find that there's no forest there. You'll have to go 1,000 kilometers south to get to a forest. So why don't you get off your fat, lazy arse and get out here and do some research? That's literally, that's a word by word quote in what he said. So there's nothing like that that sort of grounds you very, very, very quickly after you get published. So, but I to be fair, as I say, technically they're quite right, but
yeah, I think you do have to kind of, in some ways, just keep an eye on them, because sometimes if there's a general gist, you know, you do kind of want to tuck it away in the back of your head and just, okay, readers don't like that.
Mhm.
Kind of, not that you're shaping your books, but if there's a choice that you can kind of decide whether you want to put in something that might upset a reader and stuff, you know, but number one is always true to the story, obviously. But
I did a panel once with an author who's sold millions upon millions of books, and one person in the audience told her that she had her timings between one location point to another one like completely out by about an hour. You couldn't possibly do that journey in 20 minutes. And I was just like, it's called fiction. You could just let it slide.
It did happen to me where one reviewer did comment on that. Again, states couldn't conceive of the idea that you could in one day get across Dublin because it was a capital city. And that just marked me down. I was like, I'm an Irish author. I grew up next to this place. I think I might know. But I just find it more funny than
yeah.
You know.
And Rob Parker likes to make mugs out of his crap reviews as well. So if, you know, I think that's a lovely idea. It sort of helps you laugh at them a little bit more. So Rob Scragg would like to know, which author would you fanboy / fangirl over meeting?
Oh God, anyone. I'm just terrible. If there's only remotely just a whiff of fame about them, I'm a bit pathetic. But I did get to meet Tana French. She won't remember me from Adam, but I did meet her, and that was amazing because she's an incredible author. Yeah, any of them, Stephen King, but I wouldn't trust myself. I'd have to make sure my hands would, or my friends would kind of just make sure, I don't know, they were sitting on me or something, so I wouldn't run over. I don't trust my mouth, what I would say, what would come out of my mouth.
James?
yeah, I would have said Stephen King as well, but Chuck Palahniuk as well, and
Oh, nice.
Or anybody. I haven't Val McDermott. I haven't plucked up the courage to say hello to Val yet, even though I see her at Harrogate all the time. That time
I was going to say, like, you were there all last week.
Yeah, Ian Rankin as well. I didn't.
Hey, you should have.
But it's what you say. You know that's I so.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. A slightly more along the same lines, but maybe slightly more cerebral question from our Simon. Which author do you look at and feel intimidated or in awe at their complexity / structure?
Oh God.
Is that meant to be an easy question? I really did ask for easy questions.
I know, I'm sorry. I've disregarded your request for easy questions, haven't I?
I think well, not just even including crime, but just authors like Sebastian Barry. I just love his characterization. Like, you know, how he starts off with one character and then within a few lines and you don't even see how he's done it, but there's just a slight shift in your opinion of the character. So I'm always kind of flicking back through the pages of his novels to just work out exactly where the key changes are and how he's managed to do it. And Stephen King as well, just his characterization, but probably more his books like Misery and Dolores, what's it? Those kind of novels, and his Skeleton Crew and that kind of thing, where the voice is just an absolute force from page one. Because I just love that, and I'm always kind of trying to strive for that in my own writing, and so those authors definitely I would kind of look at more, just because their changes in characters are so subtle, but there's a definite change in feeling in the reader. You can't quite see where they've done it in the book. So they're the kind of the novels that I would read over and again to try and get a taste. I'm trying to think, and Donna Tartt is another one, just reading her descriptive passages, and that she's a really fantastic writer. She doesn't need me to tell her that, obviously, but
James?
Yeah, Mick Herron would be one. The characterization, it's so well done, and it's so, he just tells so much about the character just in a few simple words. There was somebody else that I thought, now it's gone completely out of my head as well.
Yeah, but he's
Oh,
energy
Stuart.
in his prose, isn't he?
Sorry?
Real energy in his prose and the openings
Yeah.
of novels and that there. Yeah, I love it.
I did like the complexity of The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Gosh, that
I
was.
read it.
No, I haven't read
I
it.
read that, and I was still struggling how you could possibly sit down to even construct that. But
Yeah.
Stephen King. Again, I think I'm just going to echo the Stephen King. You know, the
So-
characters and the numbers of books.
So my final question, hopefully this is an easy one for you. What's next, James?
What's next is it's been 2 years since sort of I finished Vanished about 2 years ago, so I've just been sort of doing sort of a number of different novels. The 3-book series is a possibility of being next, or there's I have a novel set in New South Wales, set during a bushfire that might be the next one as well. So for me, it's up in the air. I'm out of contract, so
Right.
I'm going to be going on submission at some
Exciting.
point. Yeah, it's exciting and also terrifying.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair. It's exciting for us, I'm sure, but maybe less so for you. And Olivia, is your standalone that you can't talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I can't talk about it,
Oh, I
but
know.
you know, the Murder Box has only just kind of come out, so it's I'm still very much in my head is still kind of very much in that. And then yeah, we're probably going to be working on it, but it'll be crime fiction, so definitely be another kind of thriller of some sort. And hopefully then, I mean, they might be able to get another, I don't know, I'm thinking I've got a bit of time with this one, so I think I might. I always think this. I'd be like, oh, maybe I can get 2 books out in the next 12 months. And then life, you know, goes, who are you kidding? No way. Because I'm quite a slow reader and a slow writer. So yeah, we'll see. But I think it'll be the standalone thriller next, I think, yeah.
Well,
And another Frankie Sheehan.
and another immediately.
Frankie.
Immediately.
Yeah. I feel sorry for her when I get back to what I'll be dishing up next, because I think once you've had a bit of time for something to percolate, I think she'll probably get a really awful case from me next.
And we will look forward to reading that. So it's just left to me to say thank you so much to you both for joining us and for being so great with your answers. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much, and we'll hope to see you again very soon.
I loved it. It was great. Thank you, Vic. It was great. All right.
Yep, loved it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So to celebrate the final show in this series, we've got a second guest reader for you tonight. Woo-hoo. Everyone, please welcome the author of 13, 50/50 and Twisted, Steve Cavanagh.
Hello. How you doing, folks? I almost missed my cue there. So I'm just going to do a short reading. This is from the brand new Eddie Flynn novel. It's the follow-up to 50/50, and it's out next week. And I'm just going to read you a wee bit of Eddie. Some people become lawyers with the hope of making a lot of money. Money is nice, don't get me wrong. I like having a roll in my pocket as much as the next guy, but I like being able to sleep at night too. The more cash in your pocket and the more scumbags you put back in the street, the harder it is to sleep. A criminal attorney's wealth can be measured by their bank account and the weight they carry on their souls. Until that day, that magical day when they just stop giving a shit. Then there's just the money, and it can be enjoyed without a conscience getting in the way. I never rode that path. Getting a guilty client off was against the rules, my rules. This makes me either the worst defense attorney in the world or the best, depending on how you looked at it. And Eddie's in his new offices in Tribeca with his brand new firm, his legal team. Our office was in Tribeca, just above a tattoo parlor. Kate Brooks had wanted offices in a shiny tower close to Wall Street, all glass, pine, and leather. I couldn't work in that kind of place, and Kate took pity on me by letting us rent a flea pit above a tattoo parlor called Stinkin' Ink. I was trying to get the coffee machine to produce something that didn't wipe 3 layers of skin off the roof of my mouth when the buzzer rang downstairs. It was the applicant, Denise Brown, I was sure of it, our new secretary. I pressed the button to open the front door and waited at the top of the stairs. Heavy footsteps made me wonder if Denise wore boots. I leaned over the rail. There, coming up the stairs, was the last man on earth I wanted to see. He wore a trilby hat, an old grey raincoat that must have been a gift from a long deceased loved one, because that was about the only excuse you could have for wearing it. Beneath the coat was a bespoke suit, and inside the suit was £185 of serious trouble. Unless you're here about the secretarial job, I'm afraid you'll have to leave, I said. He got to the top of the stairs, tipped his hat and smiled at me in a way that reminded me of a crocodile about to take a bite out of something important. My secretarial skills are not what they used to be, he said. Can you type and make coffee? If so, you're in. The pay is bad, but the work is lousy. I'm here about a job, Eddie, but it's got nothing to do with typing. His name was Alexander Berlin. When I last saw him, he was working for the State Department. He was a fixer and a black ops man who bent the laws to get a result for whatever limb of federal government that happened to employ him at the time. He knew where all the government's bodies were buried. I don't need a job. Whatever it is, it's going to be a no from me. You haven't heard what it is yet. Let me in for 10 minutes and a hot cup of coffee. You don't want this? Fine. I'll walk out straight after. No hard feelings, no grudges. I think it's premature to say you won't hold a grudge. You haven't tasted my coffee yet, and you won't like my answer. I'm not interested. It had been raining out. His old coat was soaked through and dripping on the stair carpet. We hadn't had time to get the floors cleaned yet, and his coat was beginning to make a clean spot among the stains. Hear me out, Eddie, said Berlin. Give me one good reason why I should listen to you, I said. Berlin removed his hat, looked at me with heavy, wet eyes, and said, because if you don't, a 19-year-old kid is going to be murdered. Murdered? Murdered by who? I asked. Berlin took a step forward and said, well, technically, me. Thanks very much, folks.
Thanks very much for that, Steve. Look forward to reading it.
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks a lot. So, we've been running our virtual shows for 1.5 years now. From our virtual, well, what do we say? From our virtual Nor at the Bar weekly shows over 27 weeks, plus Halloween and Christmas specials. And then since January this year, our monthly Bay Tales show. One question we've been asked is, will you ever do a real, live, in-person show? So we're thrilled to be able to tell you that Vic and I have been working behind the scenes here, and we can now confirm that on Saturday, the 12th of February, we will be hosting our very first Bay Tales really live show here in Whitley Bay. We've got an amazing venue booked. We've got one of the best loved and most successful authors in the country who's already signed up to appear in one of our sessions. And we've had an absolutely incredible response. We spend a lot of our time at Harrogate speaking to publishers.
You did all the work.
We spoke to lots of publishers and the response has just been amazing. And they've just said they're in and they're going to bring the biggest and the best and the brightest and the newest, and it's just going to be fabulous. So 12th of February, we'll be announcing more details soon, including details of why we think this is going to be very different from other crime events. And we really do think it is. We're going to be doing some different things. And at this stage, we'd say mark your calendar. 12th of February, follow us on social media, sign up to our email list. We'll show you how to do all of that on the end slides to make sure that you don't miss out, because for various reasons, we think tickets are going to go pretty quickly when we put them up. Yeah. So keep an eye on the opening presentation, and we hope you'll be as excited as we are at this news, and that we get to see some of you in real life after Christmas. Watch the end slides, see how to sign up to follow us, see how to sign up for the launch of Louise Candlish's new book, The Heights, which we're going to be helping launch next Thursday. So make sure you enjoy your place. Vic.
Thank you for that. Ooh, didn't you do well? We have huge thank yous to you guys in the audience tonight, to Joanne Harris, Olivia Kiernan, James Delagi, Steve Cavanagh and James Routledge for joining us tonight, and from Doug Johnston for providing our halftime music. I have put again in the chat, because I'm a bit shameless, if you'd like to donate to Ko-Fi, please do so, but it's not mandatory. That's it. Keep an eye on social media for more announcements about Bay Tales Really Live and when our next Bay Tales live show is. But in the meantime, register for the Heights launch. That's next Thursday, and we'll be seeing you very soon. Take care.